This must be some form of malfunction, Senior Observer Ixel chittered, their crystalline sensory appendages vibrating with confusion as they studied the readings for the third time. The research vessel, Eternal Knowledge, had been tracking an unidentified ship for the past 30 cycles, and nothing about its behavior followed any known spacefaring species patterns. Confirmed readings, Senior Observer. Their assistant Valka responded, interfacing directly with the ship's quantum processors. The vessel's trajectory has changed 18 times in the past cycle alone. No discernible pattern. Energy emissions fluctuate wildly. And Valka paused, their bioluminescent patches pulsing with uncertainty. They appear to be listening to something called death metal while executing these maneuvers. The Zrylaxian Empire had ruled the outer spiral arm for 10,000 cycles. Their crystalline bodies housed minds of pure logic, and their society operated with the precision of a quantum computer. They had encountered 47 spacefaring species, all of whom followed predictable patterns of expansion and exploration. But this was different. Play their communications, Ixel ordered, bracing themselves for whatever chaos might emerge from the speakers. The ship's chamber filled with a cacophony of sounds, human laughter mixed with what appeared to be recreational arguments about something called pineapple on pizza, all while the crew efficiently executed complex spatial maneuvers that defied the ship's apparent technological level. Fascinating, Ixel observed, their crystalline form refracting light in patterns that indicated deep thought. They appear to be simultaneously highly competent and completely chaotic. Send the first contact protocol signal. The response came almost immediately, in 43 different languages, including 3 the Zrylaxians had never encountered before. Somehow, this species had decoded their supposedly unbreakable transmission protocols in less time than it took a quantum particle to decay. They call themselves humans, Valka reported, their consciousness swinning through the flood of incoming data. And they want to know if we'd like to hang out and grab a coffee. Ixel's crystalline structure nearly developed a crack from the logical impossibility of the situation. Define hangout and coffee. Before Valka could respond, a new transmission cut through their communication channels. A human face appeared on their primary visualization screen, smiling in a way that made Ixel's risk assessment subroutines work overtime. "Hey there," the human exclaimed, wearing what appeared to be both a formal uniform and something called a Hawaiian shirt underneath. "I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Explorer ship Yoloswagans. Don't worry about the ship's name. Lost a bet there. We've been watching you watch us, and figured we might as well skip the whole careful diplomatic dance thing. Want to skip the formalities and just meet up. We've got great coffee, terrible jokes, and some really interesting theories about your crystalline biology we'd love to run by you." Ixel and Valka exchanged electromagnetic pulses of pure confusion. The human ship had not only detected their stealth observations, but had apparently been conducting their own advanced scientific analysis, while appearing to be engaged in what their databanks now identified as goofing off. "Captain Chen," Ixel began, trying to maintain the dignity expected of a senior observer, "your species' approach to first contact is unprecedented." "Oh, that's us in a nutshell." Sarah laughed. "Look, we get it. We've read your surface thoughts while you were scanning us. You think we're completely insane. And you know what? You're not wrong. But here's the thing. Our insanity is our superpower. While your very impressive and very logical minds were trying to figure out our flight patterns, we reverse-engineered your quantum communication protocols, mapped your crystalline neural networks, and figured out how to make your computer systems display emoji. Check your secondary screen." Ixel turned to the screen in horror to find it filled with something called dancing cat GIFs. "Impossible," Valka whispered. "Our systems are based on technology refined over 10,000 cycles. The processing power needed to—" "Oh, that was just Jerry in engineering." Sarah waved dismissively. "He did it on his coffee break. Speaking of which, you really should try coffee. It's this wonderful bean juice that basically powers human civilization. Some people say it's bad for you, but those people are weak and natural selection is coming for them." She paused, grinning. That was a joke. Mostly. The next few hours were a blur of information exchange that broke every first contact protocol in Drylaxian history. The humans shared their history, a chaos-filled narrative of a species that by all logic should have destroyed itself countless times, yet somehow emerged stronger from each near catastrophe. They fought wars while creating art, developed planet-killing weapons, and used them exactly twice before deciding, nah, that's probably a bad idea, and explored space largely because, in Sarah's words, it's really pretty and we wanted to see if we could find anyone to share means with. As Ixal prepared their first official report to the Drylaxian High Command, they struggled to find words that could adequately convey the situation. How does one explain a species that developed faster than light travel partially because they were bored and it seemed fun, or that had already created 3 different sports to play in zero gravity? The report finally sent to High Command was the shortest in Drylaxian history. Humans discovered. All previous models of intelligent life require revision. Request immediate diplomatic contact. They are either the most brilliant or most insane species we have ever encountered. Evidence suggests both. Also attached is something they call a playlist. They insist it is essential to understanding their culture. Preliminary analysis suggests they may be correct, though we still cannot determine if "never gonna give you up" is a diplomatic promise or a threat. In their private log, Ixal added one final note. The humans have a saying, "Hold my beer and watch this." I do not yet understand what beer is, but I have learned that this phrase precedes either a moment of brilliant innovation or spectacular disaster. Often both. The galaxy will never be the same. The Drylaxian High Command's testing facility was the pride of their civilization, a massive space station designed to evaluate new species through carefully crafted scenarios. No detail had been overlooked, no variable left to chance. Senior observer Ixal stood at their observation post, watching as the first group of human volunteers arrived for what the High Command insisted was a necessary evaluation of humanity's capabilities. Beginning Test Scenario 1, announced the facility's Standard Problem-Solving Evaluation. The human test subjects, 5 individuals chosen for their supposedly representative qualities, were presented with the classic Unity puzzle, a complex mathematical and engineering challenge that typically took most species several days to solve. The solution required careful calculation, precise movements, and above all, patient methodology. The humans solved it in 20 minutes by completely ignoring its intended purpose and repurposing the components into what they called a really cool robot bartender. That's not even remotely what those pieces were for, Valka observed, their crystalline form clouded with confusion. Yeah, but look, it makes margaritas, responded Dr. James Wong, the team's physicist, as the improvised machine dispensed perfectly mixed drinks. Anyone want one? No? More for us then. Test Scenario 2 wasn't any more successful, at least not in the way the Drylaxians had intended. The humans were presented with a simulated survival situation on a hostile planet. Instead of following the carefully designed survival protocols, they turned it into what they called an extreme sports competition and began awarding points for increasingly dangerous activities. Lieutenant Rodriguez just rode the toxic methane geyser to the top of the artificial mountain. Valka reported, their voice carrying what could only be described as crystalline despair. She is now using her environment suit as a makeshift wingsuit too. She's surfing down the electromagnetic storm patterns. Yee. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm as she navigated the lethal atmosphere with what appeared to be pure joy. By Test Scenario 3, the observation team had learned to expect the unexpected, but the humans still managed to surprise them. The challenge was designed to test diplomatic capabilities through interaction with a simulated alien species. The humans not only successfully negotiated with the simulation, but somehow convinced it to question its own existence, develop sentience, and join their impromptu party. The simulation wasn't even designed to be capable of self-awareness. One of the Zrylaxian technicians protested. "Oh, that was mostly Dr. Patel's doing," James explained, gesturing to their team's anthropologist who was now teaching the newly sentient program how to dance. "She has that effect on artificial intelligences. Last week, she made our coffee maker achieve enlightenment. It only serves fair trade beans now and keeps trying to teach us meditation techniques." The breaking point came during test scenario 4, the combat simulation. The humans were presented with a complex military challenge designed to test their tactical capabilities. The scenario was unwinnable by design, meant to evaluate how species handled inevitable defeat. The humans won, not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through what Captain Sarah Chen, who had insisted on joining the test group, called weaponized shenanigans. They transformed the simulation's parameters through a combination of exploiting physics glitches, psychological warfare that involved convincing half the enemy AI to start a labor union, and something they called speedrunning strats. "This isn't possible," Ixel declared, watching as the humans celebrated their victory by teaching the recently unionized enemy AI how to play something called Mario Kart on a gaming system they had somehow manufactured from spare parts during their lunch break. "That's humanity's secret," Sarah explained, joining the observation team with a cup of coffee in hand. "We don't believe in impossible. We see it more as a dare. Tell us something can't be done, and we'll do it out of spite, if nothing else." "But why?" Ixel asked, genuine curiosity overriding their professional detachment. "Why expend so much energy defying established parameters?" Sarah thought for a moment, taking a sip of her coffee. "You know how your species evolved from crystal formations, always growing in predictable patterns, building on established structures. Well, we evolved from mammals who learned that sometimes the best way to survive is to try something completely ridiculous because the predator wouldn't expect it. We kept that instinct and turned it into a civilization." "That explains far too much," Valka admitted. "Plus," Sarah added with a grin, "it's fun. You should try it sometime. Speaking of which, we've got some ideas about how to upgrade your testing facility. How do you feel about laser tag?" The final report to High Command was even shorter than the first. "Testing protocols require complete revision. Humans do not solve problems. They redefine them. They do not overcome obstacles. They befriend them or turn them into entertainment. Most concerning of all, they appear to be having fun doing it. Recommendation: either terminate all contact immediately or accept that the galaxy is about to become much more interesting. Addendum: they have modified our quantum computing core to run something called Doom. Efficiency has somehow improved by 218%. In their private log, Ixel added, "The humans have a concept called chaos theory. At first, I thought it was a scientific principle. I now understand it is less a theory and more their operational manual. The most terrifying part is not that they thrive in chaos. It's that they generate it with enthusiasm and purpose. May the first crystal help us all." The Zrylaxian High Command's decision to simulate warfare scenarios with humans was, in retrospect, their first major miscalculation. Their second was assuming they could control the parameters of these simulations. Within weeks, both these errors became painfully apparent. "They're doing it again," Valka reported, their crystalline form vibrating with stress as they monitored the latest war game simulation. "They're using the environmental systems in ways that violate several laws of physics." Senior observer Ixel, now promoted to Chief of Human Studies, a position created out of sheer necessity, watched as the human fleet executed what they called a pro-gamer move. Somehow, they had discovered that flying their ships in a specific pattern while playing something called bass-boosted sea shanties created a resonance that temporarily disrupted the simulation's gravity fields. Technically, Captain Sarah Chen's voice crackled over the comm. We're not violating physics. We're just strongly suggesting that it look the other way for a moment. Physics is more of a guideline anyway, right? The simulation was supposed to be testing human military doctrine. Instead, it was testing the Zrylaxians' ability to comprehend increasingly improbable tactics. The humans had divided their forces into what they called raid groups, a term apparently borrowed from something called memorcs. Each group seemed to operate on its own bizarre logic. Alpha Squad is approaching the target using a maneuver they call the Texas two-step, a bewildered tactical officer reported. Beta Squad is, are they playing card games with the enemy eye? That would be Dr. Patel's group, Sarah explained cheerfully. They've convinced half the enemy fleet to join their poker tournament. The buy-in is tactical information. And what about Gamma Squad? Ixel asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Oh, they're doing a speedrun attempt. They think they can beat their previous record for capital ship capture. They're streaming it live on Twitch. The war games continued for several cycles, each scenario more chaotic than the last. The humans approached combat like it was simultaneously a science, an art form, and a particularly entertaining party game. They developed strategies that no sane military would consider, yet somehow they worked. Their latest tactic involves something they call multi-track drifting with capital ships. Valka reported, their voice carrying a mix of horror and reluctant admiration. They're using the gravitational fields of gas giants to slingshot battlecruisers at speeds that should tear the ships apart. Instead, they're drawing elaborate patterns that they claim spell out LOL when viewed from the proper angle. But it wasn't just their unorthodox tactics that disturbed the Zrylaxian observers. It was the way humans treated warfare itself. They approached it with a combination of deadly seriousness and inexplicable humor. They would execute precise military maneuvers while sharing what they called memes over the tactical channels. The most concerning aspect, Ixel noted in their official report, is not their military capability, but their ability to turn anything into a form of recreation. They have developed a scoring system for their combat maneuvers. They are competing not just against the simulation, but against their own previous performances. They have turned warfare into a game, yet they execute it with terrifying efficiency. The situation reached its peak when the humans discovered they could mod the simulation itself. One morning, the Zrylaxian observers arrived to find the entire system had been modified to include something called RGB lighting and custom skins for all the ships. Check it out, Lieutenant Rodriguez announced proudly. We gave all the battleships cat ears. And wait until you see what happens when we hit the space horn. The weapon effects are now synchronized to Sandstorm by Darude. But why? Asked a thoroughly defeated Zrylaxian programmer. Why not? Was the only response, delivered with what humans called a shrug, a gesture that the Zrylaxians had come to recognize as a harbinger of chaos. The final War Games report was sealed in the highest level of classified documents, marked with a warning that read, contains information that may cause logical systems to crash. Its conclusion was simple. Humans do not just wage war, they redefine its very nature. They have turned combat into a form of entertainment, strategy into an art form, and military doctrine into what they call speedrun strats. Most disturbing of all, they appear to be getting better at it. Recommendation: never, under any circumstances, engage in actual warfare with humans. They will not just defeat you, they will turn your defeat into a trending video with commentary and a dubstep soundtrack. In their personal log, Ixel added a final note. The humans have introduced me to something they call energy drinks. After consuming one, I understand them better. The universe appears to move slower. My thought processes have accelerated, and I have developed an inexplicable desire to attempt physically improbable maneuvers with military hardware. I am both terrified and intrigued. The humans call this feeling being hyped. I am beginning to suspect that their entire civilization operates in this state permanently. The Zrylaxian Cultural Research Division was not prepared for humans. In their 10,000 cycles of studying alien civilizations, they had developed extensive protocols for analyzing and categorizing species. Humans, as they were learning, defied categorization. "I need clarification," senior researcher Nexel announced during the weekly briefing. "These humans have developed fusion power, quantum computing, and faster-than-light travel, yet they still celebrate by hitting things with sticks until candy falls out." Piñatas, Valka corrected, having become something of a human cultural expert by necessity. And yes, they consider it a crucial part of many celebrations, though not as crucial as something called karaoke, which appears to be ritual emotional release through purposefully imperfect singing. The cultural research team had been studying human broadcasts, literature, and social media for months. Each discovery led to more questions. Their latest findings had the entire division in an uproar. They intentionally watch entertainment designed to frighten them. One researcher reported their crystalline form clouded with confusion. They call them horror movies. They pay money to experience simulated fear, and then they argue about whether the frightening elements were frightening enough. "That's nothing," another researcher chimed in. "They have competitions where they consume food items specifically bred to cause pain. They call them ghost peppers. The humans who eat the most painful ones are celebrated as champions." Ixel, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up. "You're all missing the most bizarre aspect. Humans create problems for themselves to solve, for fun. They call them puzzles and games. They intentionally make their own lives more difficult for entertainment." The evidence was overwhelming. Humans would climb mountains because they're there. They would solve complex mathematical equations for the aesthetic. They created artificial challenges in virtual worlds, then spent countless hours overcoming them for achievements that existed only as digital acknowledgments. "Their entertainment defies logic," Valka reported. "They have something called speedrunning, where they try to complete tasks as quickly as possible using methods that break the intended design. They call exploiting these breaks tech and consider it a valid strategy." But it wasn't just human entertainment that baffled the researchers. Their social structures were equally confounding. Humans would form intense bonds over shared interests in completely arbitrary things. They created communities around preferences for different types of beans and hot water, coffee, around moving images of small animals, cat videos, and around heated debates about whether certain foods belonged on other foods, the infamous pineapple on pizza controversy. "They argue constantly," one social analyst noted. "They debate everything from the nature of existence to the correct way to store bread. But here's the truly bizarre part. They often do this for fun. They call it discourse and actively seek it out." The research team had discovered that humans had dozens of words for different types of love, multiple competing systems for measuring temperature, and somehow maintained several different calendars simultaneously. They had created thousands of languages and continued to create new ones for fun. They made up stories about making up stories. "Their creativity is troubling," Nexel admitted. "They imagine things that don't exist, write them down, share them with others, and then create entire communities around these imaginary concepts. They call it world building and fan fiction. They spend real resources on fictional resources." But perhaps most disturbing was humanity's relationship with their own technology. They created artificial intelligences and immediately tried to teach them jokes. They developed virtual reality and used it to simulate impossible scenarios. They had the capability to destroy their own planet several times over, but instead used that knowledge to create increasingly elaborate fireworks displays. They've turned their social media platforms into a form of performance art, Valka reported. They communicate through layered irony and something called memes, which appear to be an evolving language of modified images. The meaning changes based on context that isn't explicitly stated. They call this being extremely online and consider it normal. The official report to the Cultural Research Division was a masterpiece of understatement. Human culture appears to be based on the principle of doing things because we can. They have turned every aspect of existence into a form of entertainment, challenge, or art, often all three simultaneously. They create problems to solve them, build things to see if they can, and consistently choose the most interesting option over the most logical one. In their private research notes, Ixel added, "The humans have a concept called trolling, which appears to be the deliberate subversion of expectations for amusement. After extensive study, I am forced to consider the possibility that their entire civilization might be an elaborate form of trolling. They are either the most brilliant species we've ever encountered or completely insane. The truly terrifying possibility is that these might be the same thing." The final addendum, added after attending what humans called the movie night, simply read, "They created something called Sharknado and made 6 of them, on purpose. I understand nothing." No one expected the void swarm to arrive when it did. The ancient enemy of all organic life emerged from deep space without warning, a massive collective of biomechanical entities that consumed everything in their path. The Zrylaxian Empire, with all its 10,000 cycles of advancement, found itself facing an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with, couldn't be predicted, and couldn't be stopped. Until the humans got involved. "Let me get this straight," Captain Sarah Chen said during the emergency coalition meeting. "These things adapt to any weapon used against them more than once. They operate on pure logic, and they've never encountered humanity before." She grinned. "Oh, this is going to be fun." The Zrylaxian High Command watched in mixed horror and fascination as humanity mobilized for war. Not in the ordered, logical way other species did, but in their own uniquely chaotic manner. They didn't just prepare their military. They turned the entire war effort into what they called a community event. "They're doing it again," Valka reported, watching the tactical displays. "They're using social media to crowdsource battle strategies. They've turned combat coordination into something called a Discord server with custom emojis. But it worked. The Void Swarm, for all its adaptive capabilities, couldn't adapt to what it couldn't predict. And nothing, as the Zrylaxians had learned, was more unpredictable than humans being creative. The humans have introduced something called speedrun strats to fleet combat," Ixel noted in their tactical assessment. "They're using gravitational slingshots around black holes while playing something called initial D music. The Void Swarm's predictive algorithms are crashing trying to calculate their trajectories. The humans approached the existential threat the same way they approached everything else, as a challenge to be overcome, a game to be won, and an opportunity to show off. They turned their civilian manufacturing into war production not through strict government control, but through what they called epic community challenges and achievement unlocks. Each human battle group has developed its own aesthetic," one bewildered Zrylaxian commander reported. "Beta Fleet has painted all their ships in something called vaporwave colors and plays synthesizer music during combat. Gamma Fleet has modified their ships to emit rainbow trails and calls themselves the RGB Gamers. And Alpha Fleet has somehow taught their AI systems to trash talk in 70 different languages." But it wasn't just human combat tactics that proved effective. Their cultural influence began to spread throughout the coalition forces. Zrylaxian ships started adopting human customs, first as experiments, then with increasing enthusiasm. The crystalline flagship Eternal Logic has requested permission to install something called a sick beat drop into their main weapon systems, Valka reported. They claim it improves crew morale and, inexplicably, targeting accuracy. The Void Swarm, designed to counter logical strategies and predictable patterns, found itself facing an enemy that treated warfare like a multiplayer game and combat like a party. Humans didn't just fight. They streamed their battles, commented on them in real time, and turned tactical operations into what they called epic montage moments. They've started rating their combat maneuvers on style points, Ixel noted with a mixture of awe and resignation. They're competing to create what they call the most epic gamer moments in space warfare history. And somehow, this is making them more effective. The turning point came when humanity introduced what they called mod support to coalition warfare. They began modifying their ships and tactics in ways that no logical species would consider, but that proved devastatingly effective against an enemy that relied on predictability. The humans have a saying, Sarah explained during a strategy session. Modern problems require modern solutions, but we prefer to use ancient solutions, future solutions, and completely ridiculous solutions all at once. Because why not try everything? The final battle against the Void Swarm's main consciousness took place in a sector humans promptly renamed 360 No-Scope Nebula. The combined fleet, now thoroughly influenced by human methods, executed what Sarah Chen called the ultimate pro-gamer move, a combination of tactics so absurd that the swarm's logical processors suffered what humans termed a complete mental blue screen. In the aftermath, as the coalition celebrated their victory, the Zrylaxian High Command finally understood. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology, their weapons, or even their tactics. It was their ability to turn anything, even an existential threat, into an opportunity for innovation, entertainment, and community. The official final report on humanity was brief. They are insane. This is not a criticism. In a universe that often defies logic, humanity's illogical nature may be the most logical adaptation of all. They do not overcome challenges. They befriend them, modify them, and turn them into content for something called YouTube. The galaxy will never be the same, and perhaps that's exactly what it needed. In their final personal log, Ixel added, "The humans have a concept called GGEZ, which they say after achieving difficult victories. I don't fully understand it, but I find myself wanting to say it now. They are rubbing off on me. I should be terrified by this. Instead, I'm going to see if I can get RGB lighting installed in my crystalline matrix. For the aesthetic, as they say. The universe is chaos, and humanity has taught us to surf it." The log ended with a postscript. They're now organizing a post-war party they're calling Space Coachella. I don't know what that is, but based on previous experience, I expect it to be simultaneously brilliant and ridiculous, just like them. End log. Time to yeet myself into this new era, as the humans would say.